Welcome to Beyond Bacalhau, Cracking the Portuguese Business Code by Raquel Batista. Hey guys, and welcome to the 11th episode of my podcast, Beyond Bacalhau, Cracking the Portuguese Business Code. I have with me someone very special. Margaret, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? What are your plans? And what do you plan to do here in Portugal?
Well, thanks, Raquel, for having me on. My name is Margaret Malewski, and I'm founder of Cascais Business Bootcamp. Recently arrived in Portugal. I was born in Canada. I spent 10 years in Europe in my 20s, in Poland, in Switzerland, and also in the Middle East. Then I returned to Canada, wrote a book about the expat experience and taught intercultural studies. Then went to business school and founded a venture-funded tech startup, and eventually ended up in the US as a professor of entrepreneurship and personal leadership, which brings us to what I'm up to in Portugal. Cascais Business Bootcamp is a coaching service for mostly first-time women entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs more broadly as well, who are trying to figure out how to get started in their new life in Portugal. So that's what I'm up to now, and it kind of combines my own entrepreneurial experience and my experience teaching entrepreneurship.
And this is funny because now that I try to remember, I don't even remember how we connected, but I seem to feel that like-minded individuals often are magnetic to each other. And I think that this was part of our journey, was just finding each other and then connecting and say, look, I'm doing this and maybe we could talk about it. Maybe we could do something together. And I think it makes perfect sense in the way that because of all of your past experience and international experience, but also because of my local experience here. So I think it's such a good combo. And also we're very much targeting, of course, not only the entrepreneurship community, but also the female entrepreneurship community. And so that those are also common themes between the both of us. And so I really wanted to do this, and I wanted to tell everybody, and we'll, market this through socials, that by talking to Margaret, we started thinking that the best thing to do was probably to do a whole video series about entrepreneurship. How to start, why to start, how to start in the right way. And so I knew that this podcast wouldn't be enough because we want to limit this to 30, 35, 40 minutes at max. And so there's so much to talk about. I mean, it's a whole world, that what we decided was, let's do a whole video series about entrepreneurship in Portugal. And this is what we're going to do. So this is like an introductory podcast about what that video series is going to be, what we will cover. And if this is where you're at right now, then that series is something that you'll want to really take a look at and see, because the podcast sometimes serves as an appetizer, let's say, of other more profound things. So this content, it's often a summary of other things. So for instance, I have a lot of podcasts that are summaries of things that I go through in my clients' consultations. And so obviously it even saves time if I tell them, go watch the podcast and you'll have an idea of what I need here. And when they come to me, they're already prepared. But these are just introductory because it's half an hour. When we want to deep dive into subjects, and sometimes we do need to deep dive, so it's training, it's really a long, hard, deep conversation, we need a longer format. And that's why we decided that we were going to do this YouTube video series about entrepreneurship in Portugal. But regardless of that future endeavor, which we will start, and I think it's going to be really great, one of the first topics that we would like to approach is the purpose or the definition of success. And Margaret, I want you to take this on, because with all of the things that we talked about, this was something that I thought you explained perfectly.
Thank you. So I think the first thing to say is many women starting businesses here in Portugal are experienced in the corporate world and have a lot of business experience, but are first time entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
And so that's a big shift in mindset, right? If you're part of a larger organization, your purpose is set for you. It's sort of part of the parameters you're living in. Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, you really have to lay out your purpose on your own, what you're trying to achieve both in your business and in your life as a whole. And especially, I think, as women, we look at those things as being very integrated. We need to make sure that our business, however we structure it, allows us to pursue all our goals, whether it's family, whether it's health, whether it's obligations to parents or to children, right? The whole picture has to come together. So this is one of the first things I sit down and talk about is, what is my purpose? And there's many different ways to approach that question, but I think there's two framings that I found that are super helpful. One thing you can ask yourself is, what do I want to create, right? What do I want to use my energy to bring into this world? And how do I want to serve others? What do I enjoy doing? What do I want to create every day? And that helps us focus on the work we like to do, because often one way we get confused is we think about the end state. I want to have a business that's making money, that has however many employees, and we think about it as sort of finished product. But entrepreneurship, as I'm sure you know, is
It's
work
a,
every day, and
it's a jungle.
it, you have to understand what it is that you like doing every day. What tasks do you like filling up your day with? And your goal is to have maybe 60, 70, 80% of your day filled doing things that you actually like to do, like to create. And that's why I like to start with that question. What is it that I want to create?
You were talking, I was just remembering exactly my journey as a corporate person and then entering on my own on the entrepreneurship space was suddenly, I thought I was a pretty organized person. Suddenly I realized that a lot of the structure that I had there I didn't have here. And I struggled with a lot of things. I struggled with admin work. I struggled with CRM. I struggled with having an organized system of managing the several sides of business. So the relationship with clients, I have to, because of my difficulties with ADHD and such, I have to have a visual. So whenever I talk to clients, I have to take like a picture or a screenshot or whatever, and then put that, because otherwise in my mind it will be completely forgotten. And these weren't difficulties that I had when I was working the corporate world. I was, the leader of a lot of people. I had to organize a lot of people, but these sort of more simple, mundane tasks, or that we think that are mundane, end up causing a lot more chaos in
Mhm.
my day-to-day life than the international complex contracts that
Mhm.
I that I dealt with and negotiated in my previous life. So the purpose for me, I think destiny ended up leading me to it. And for a few years I had not thought about doing this, but thought about changing my life. And then the opportunity came and everything, like the stars aligned for me to leave. But I left with a completely disorganized like head, and I didn't have a way, like I didn't have a map. I had Alice, who was just days old, and then I had to come up with a strategy of what I wanted to do. So the purpose there was finding something else that I could do and that would get me income. I would like you also to approach a little bit about how we can connect our own experiences and training and professional past to then use that to a different thing. Because at the time my difficulty was, okay, I have 20 years of experience in the financial world. I'm top of the line compliance officers, insurance companies, private banking, asset management, all of that. But then suddenly that is so niched that how can I transpose that into something that I want to do here, or that I can do here, that is sellable to a more mass market people, and still maintain my purpose, which is use my technical abilities to make money, but not but get out of the grind, of the rat race that I had. So sometimes it's difficult for us to transpose
Mhm.
the knowledge that we had. And of course you have such a variety of knowledge and of professional experience that now that you have this boot camp, how did you transition all of that to focusing on in directing on a new thing? A lot of people, I think, will struggle with that, as I did.
I think I heard you say two things, right? One is the transition from the corporate environment where you were able to focus on your specialty and
Hmm.
delegate a lot of things to others, right? And
Hmm.
how does that transition into entrepreneurship? And the other thing is, how do you transpose the skills that you
Yes.
had from the corporate environment to the startup world? So I think
Yes.
there's a number of techniques that I use when working with clients to map out their strengths, right? Map out their skills, their strengths, their experiences, and then to do an exercise to figure out what's transferable to the entrepreneurial world. And then from there, which ones do they actually want to use? Because I think one of the things we encounter is sometimes we have skills or things that we do that we actually don't enjoy doing, right? So
Hmm.
it's critical to identify what are the things that I'm good at but also like to do, and what
Hmm.
is it that's also needed, right? So then there's an outward looking piece. What's needed in the market that I know, and how can we connect those things? So I have a number of techniques to help analyze that, and I think we can go in more in depth in our video series about what those techniques are
Hmm.
and how we can use them. So that's a process of sort of self-reflection that we can do to get you there.
And it's not easy, right, Margaret? Because
No.
women are traditionally the best self-sabotagers of all time. So if need be, I mean, I know in my case, I was like, I know nothing.
Yeah.
I have no skills that I can use for for anything other than, like, I have to get another corporate job, exactly the same as it was before, but in a different company. So
But you have a tremendous amount of skills and knowledge,
yes.
right? Both in terms of setting up a business and doing real estate transactions and doing an M&A, and you brought
Yeah.
all those skills and all that knowledge, right? And then the other thing that we realize is, as we look at our skills, we realize what are the things that are necessary for our business but that we don't like to do or that we're
Hmm.
not particularly good at. And I think this is a really important part of being an entrepreneur, is identifying those things that we didn't previously do and then figuring out, well, is this something I need to learn? And sometimes we do at the initial stages when it's just you. There's a lot of things you have to learn and accept that you're not going to do that well. But there's a point where you figure out, you know what? This is not my strongest suit. This is not my highest value activity. And I need to
Hmm.
partner with somebody and figure out who can do that for me, right? And there's a number of those things that can be delegated, partnered, and this is something where I think entrepreneurs can also often trip up, is get flooded by all the activities, all the mundane, everyday administrative activities, and not get the support and the help they need, because there's a chicken and egg thing. I don't have cash flow yet. Do I invest? Do I not
Precisely.
invest? Right? And these are other things we need to talk about is, what's your budget for your first year? And actually making plans to invest to hire the skills that you need, that you don't want to be an expert at, so that you can spend time on the skills. I call them, there's the $100 an hour skills or 100
Yeah.
euro an hour skills, and then there's the 20 euro an hour skills, and you're best off spending your time doing those highly value added activities, because those are the ones that are going to grow your business. And so it's important to find the people who can partner with you on the lower value for your business. Those are high value for them, right? Those are the
Yeah. Yeah.
skills
Yeah.
that they're really good at. But for you, these are not highly value added skills. So that's not to diminish those
Well, of
activities. It's
course.
just to say that in your constellation of things that you're doing, they are not leveraging your best ability, and making sure you partner with people, right? And these kinds of productive win-win trades are super important to unleashing your skills and also not burning out, right? And that
Hmm.
sort of brings us to this other component, right? That this has to be fulfilling for all your values. And I think, one thing that's perhaps distinctive in how I approach this is, for me, a business isn't something that has to grow to the maximum size or has to consume you completely. A perfect business is of a manageable size where it's highly profitable, takes a designated amount of time, and over time it starts to run itself. You can delegate more and more and more of the everyday running of the business, and you can focus on the most highly value added activities, which is maybe new lines of business, sourcing new clients, right? Focusing on the things that you uniquely can do so that you have time to pursue your other interests. And then there's a business that runs itself that brings you money. But the whole thing can be actually quite small, but very fulfilling. So that's the kind of, crafting of a business that I particularly like doing, building
I,
something sustainable and resilient.
I wanted to move on to that second issue that we want to approach, which is the definition of success, and it has a lot to do with that. So what is our optimal? Because a lot of times we think money and having a lot of work and a lot of money. Especially since COVID, a lot of people have changed it. And certainly I have the perspective on the value of money versus the value of time. But before just we get into that second topic, which is great, absolutely important to talk about. The fact that you mentioned that you have to plan for the costs, for instance, is one of the things that I always tell my clients. When we are creating a company, we need to at least plan for a whole year in terms of share capital and in terms of fixed expenses that you're going to have, whether it is social security or accountancy, to make that company survive at least for a year, with the consideration that you're not getting any clients entering your door. And those costs, those delegation costs, those help costs that you were talking about, should come into play in that first year, because I certainly didn't do any of that. So I wing it. I just wing it with everything, with the website, with my business strategy, with my content. I of course had to learn a lot. I had to find out what marketing was and what digital marketing was and what a sales funnel was, all of those things. So, but that took me a lot of time. It was very painful and it took me a lot of time. And the only reason I could actually do that, it's because we're unicorns, of course, as women, because I was completely postpartum and with a child, nursing and all of those things, and with two other. I just wanted to really point out that the cost planning part is really important, even at the start of the business, even from a formality point of view, because you do have to define what the share capital is going to be for your company. Now that we got that out of the way, I really wanted you to dive into the second excruciatingly important item, which is, what is your definition of success? Because for me, it certainly has changed. At the beginning, I was very anxious with having anything that would make income. So whatever
Mhm.
it was. And I remember that at the start, I did a lot of like NIF requests and all of these things that I really hate. But it was just in that anxiety of seeing any type of sort of money getting in that I accepted everything. And then, of course, through time and through referrals and through all of that, I was able to channel my work into the things that I like the most, and then that are more valuable and that are more high paid services. But I really struggled there for a while to really think about if I was being successful or not as a business owner, because at another time I was doing a business consultancy for a company. I really did have a lot of money, as income every month, because it was almost a year contract and it was very well paid contract. But I was in living hell.
Mhm.
My anxiety was through the roof. I had no limitation or boundaries in terms of hours. I had meetings that were set up on a Sunday for the next Monday at 9 o'clock. So at that time, I was like, this is not working. This is not, I don't want this. So it's very important to really define what you want and then stick with it and then fight for it. So I'd really like you to talk a little bit about this, because for personal experience, that was very difficult issue.
Absolutely. I mean, we could spend a whole hour talking
Yes.
about it, and it deserves that time. But I think at a very high level, one is, what is the type of work you want to be doing every day? I think that's relating to what you said about, you're doing NIF applications, or, do you like helping a client strategize about the business entity and
Yeah.
strategy that they want to have, right? Where do you prefer to spend your time? So we have this one short life. What kind of work would we like to be doing, right? And so I think that's a big component of it, is we need to enjoy most of the work we do. It's not going to be everything, it's not going to be all the time, but most of it. Also, another question that's really important is, how much is enough?
Mm.
When do we stop, right? And it's interesting. I have a good friend here in Portugal who has a fairly substantial real estate company, and he says, my friends are going on to bigger and bigger projects, and at this point he's like, I don't want that. I've reached $100 million project, and I don't need $1 billion project, but I do want to go surfing every day.
Mm.
And so, figuring out what is enough for our needs, for our family, for what fulfills us personally, for what fulfills our financial needs. And then when do we say, that's enough? Now let's take what we have in terms of income and make it more efficient, make it more profitable, make it run itself, right? How do we make this robust rather than grow it bigger, so that we do have the time to rest, to spend on the other things that matter. So, and it's and in the startup world, in the entrepreneurship world, often there's this pressure, this paradigm that you have to be a unicorn, that you have to grow this big, right? And that it has to be more and more. Do we open, one more location and another location, and do we scale it? But maybe that's not necessarily. Maybe we can just make the location we have extremely profitable, extremely efficient, and that's enough to maintain stress levels, right? So these are the very kind of personal discussions that need to happen, but I think we don't often ask ourselves at the outset what it is that we want to have at the other end, and it's a useful
Mm-hmm.
reference to have when there's the temptation of doing more, right? It's some sort of standard. What's our happiness? And that should be the standard for what we add on to the business, so that we don't drown.
And then do
Um,
you have the strength to keep, to the discipline to not be tempted to go overboard in spite of what you planned and what you said, right?
Yeah, it's a constant discipline. So it's good to have that, clear at the outset. What do I want? So that you can say yes. It's a standard to say yes or no to a particular piece of work. And it's flexible, right? You have to work with, there's circumstances that change, and sometimes you do a NIF application because you have a slow month, right?
Yeah.
So it's not something that's going to be shackles to your decision making, but it's really helpful to have that reference. And so to me, there's also this tension between, often we think of success as a particular outcome, as a destination, as a place we want to get to. If I have a business that is doing this, I will be successful. Or, if I have a particular car, a particular house, I will be successful. But we don't think about, what's that journey like? What
Yeah.
does it take to make us feel successful every day, where the piece of work we've done that day gives us fulfillment and has served somebody, right? And so that's a lens that's also important to lay on this, right? What would make us feel good today, even though we haven't reached the ultimate outcome? Because otherwise it's easy to get on this treadmill
Yeah.
of going to a destination and not seeing the journey that we're on every day.
That's funny, Margaret, because that really reminded me of a high that I started to get in my business that then I really realized that I didn't have before in my corporate world, which I knew I kind of missed, but it was one of the reasons why I got so, my soul got so disconnected from it, was the fact that I didn't see the impact that I had in people's lives. But it's funny because at first, and I still do that now, but now I'm at a place where I have to be disciplined and value my time more. But for a number of months or years, I've been doing this for nearly 3 years. I did a lot of consultancy free, completely free of charge. But the high that I got from seeing that that person had the means, the tools, or whatever they needed to get their life in a secure place, that they could start a business with safety, or that they could get into a rental contract and they knew the rules, they knew everything, that they were buying a house, but that everything was in order, whatever it was. I got such a high of the feedback that these people gave me, because it was, for me, it was like, it's so simple, it's nothing, what I'm doing, it's nothing. And of course it's not nothing, it's a lot, because it's nothing for me because I have that knowledge for a long time and I think that is simple. But it's really complicated for someone else who doesn't know this and is here day zero. And so this is a very helpful thing that I do. But I didn't even realize how precious and how important this work was,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of the financial aspect of the financial bill. And there was so many times that I did consultancies, and I remember at the end of the day my husband asked me, okay, how much how much did you earn today? And I was like, I don't think I earned anything. Okay, but how many consultations did you give? 6, 7. And he was like, well, that math is not adding up. And I knew that at the time, but I also knew that I had to build my clients base through
Mm-hmm.
referrals. And so I chunked it up. Like I told him, this is like marketing costs. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
this is marketing. It's not like I'm doing free services. This is marketing costs. But in the end, it really did serve me, because now, as incredible as it may be, like 95, 98%, to not say 100% of the clients that come up to me are referrals, are people that know me from somewhere. And so those years or those months of that work, unpaid work, really did prove that it bared its fruits.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a lot to do with the definition of success, because to me, the definition of success is very much tied to the impact that I can have in people's lives, which was something that I didn't necessarily know before, but now that I am very aware of, is my definition of success has also to do not only with the financial thing, not only with the time management thing, but also with the impact that I see that I have in people's lives. And so this is really important. And I wanted to, of course, time is running off our hands, but I wanted to approach one last item, which is it was a major difficulty for me, as I've said, is how do we get started? I mean, I had no idea how to get started, so I just, as I told you, I just wing it and try to, take care of one thing at a time. But how do we start in a proper, calm, tranquil, safe way?
Well,
There's
I
no
don't
such
know.
thing.
I don't know if that is possible. But I think how to get started is a really important question for entrepreneurs, especially if you've been in the corporate world, right?
Mm,
Because there is no structure, right? So there is no guide, there is no first step that somebody's telling you, do
yeah.
this, do that. Um, so the first thing is, how do you set up a small experiment or some small sample of the work that you want to do and just try it with low risk, right? So in your cases, could I advise one person on this thing? And how does it flow? Do you enjoy doing it, right? You get a feedback loop about, is this work I actually enjoy, right? You learn that. And then you also get a sense of what's required. How long does it take? How many hours, right? How does an engagement flow? So you kind of, it gives you an opportunity to map out what's involved. And then you take those learnings and then you create a slightly bigger experiment, right? And you build on these ideas. So whenever somebody is starting a business, one thing that I encourage them to do is to set up the minimum viable product, the MVP. What is some small experiment that you can run to verify your assumptions? on this project. But it's challenging because for some people find even that daunting. I've had a woman come to me and say, "Hey, look, I know what I want to do, but I just need someone to help me get started." And I find that that first month of collaboration is one where we meet often to get the flywheel spinning, because in the initial moments there's a lot of doubt. There's this, like, I'm creating this thing, it doesn't exist yet, is it real? Right? Your mind plays games with you.
Yeah. Am I
And having,
imagining things?
yes, I mean,
Am I getting into a fantasy that's like it's all in my head and it's not going to be real?
yes. So having a thought partner during that time who can say, "Yep, just keep running your experiment. Don't think too much." That's the first recommendation. Set a
Yeah.
plan, go do it. Don't think too much. And keep at it, right? And at some point, it feels like a flywheel. At some point, you start getting momentum, where you start getting feedback. People actually accept your offers or your services, and then you see, oh, this is working. And then it starts feeling real. Then it starts feeling material. Then you start building the systems around it. Then it starts taking a life of its own. But that early phase needs, accountability. It needs a partner. It needs somebody to help you through that. Oftentimes, I mean, it's possible to do it alone, but it's much harder. And then the spacing of that support, can get larger, but accountability, periodic check-ins, direction setting, intention setting, are really important in those early. It's like a little flower that you're nurturing, right? It needs a special environment as it's growing its first leaves. Then it gets more robust to the wind, the rain, and all the environmental factors. I don't know, what was it like for you? How were those early weeks?
Kind of disbelief when I had like my first sale. I was like euphoric, like yeah, I remember the first time I had a sale through my website. I was like, oh my God, someone bought this. And mind you, this was a training session, a video training session that cost me a lot of money because I wanted to do it properly. I had no idea how to shoot, how to video. I didn't have anything, any materials. And so I actually hired people to do this. And so those courses that end up being really expensive. Uh, and I don't think still to this day they've paid themselves. But in any case, when I had that first buy, I was euphoric. I was like, okay, this can be real. Maybe I can do this. And maybe people do believe that what I have to give them is useful and it's worth money. And then um and for me it was also a issue of having flexibility, because over the years I've changed the work that I've done. And so even recently I've opened up a new area of business because clients of mine asked me for help with real estate, with buying real estate. That was like completely not in my plan to do anything real estate. I think there's a realtor every, that I stumble upon realtors every 5 minutes when I cross the street. So that was really not something that I really wanted to do. But it ended up being a back, let's say, a complementary or a complement to my business.
Right.
So I also think that you really need to be flexible to adjust every time, but don't forget that high that you get when you get that first sale. And of course, believe that that person wasn't crazy. They didn't buy that because it was a mistake. They really do think that there is value in what you sell. And I find that having that confidence, that self confidence, and not boycotting or self sabotaging, which is something that we women do a lot, is really the most difficult thing, is actually keeping on believing when there's no result in sight and you're just like a fanatic religious person that you're saying, no, this is going to work, this is going to work. You don't see anything, you don't see any return, but you still have to believe, believe, believe. And then suddenly one day the flowers start to pop, right, of all the seeds that you've planted. And then it compounds, because it's not just one flower, because you've been, for a whole year, you've been spreading seeds. So then it's suddenly it's a full garden, and you're like, wow, did I really do this? So I find that really, it was a very difficult path, but what I really wanted to get across, and I think you probably too, is that people have to believe in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if even better, if you have someone like you, by their side, planning things, that believing them, and consulting on what's the best way to go forward. And of course, then there's the formal side of things, how to create a company, the issues that we have, the items that we have to create a company. If you get that from the ground with the right foundation, do believe that that is possible. You are not crazy. You are not fantasizing. This can be true. And for instance, in my case, now it is a reality. But if you had told me this 3 years ago, I would go like, really? I'm going to be filming a podcast with, having a YouTube channel or whatever. That's not going to happen. And it is. So I think that role of being by someone's side is really, really pivotal to the success of someone.
Yeah, it's really impressive what you've accomplished, because you're really at that sweet spot of you're doing something that you find as easy as the air you breathe and yet is highly valuable to someone else. It gives you satisfaction. It builds on your skills, right? You've really created that. And then you got started and you layered things on over time, right? You started with one thing and then things have added on and on. I think that's another thing that we can often get psyched out by, is we see somebody with a business that's more advanced than ours, that has
That's
all these different
true.
components, and those come over time. It's okay that the thing you start with is smaller, simpler, and the podcast will come in year 3, right? And the nice marketing will come in year 2, and the first year will look messy, but it
Yeah.
will be good enough, right? And that's okay. So it's having that confidence to trust that things will grow and become beautiful, and those seeds that you've spread will sprout like they have for you. So it's really exciting.
It's not without bruises. It's not without like thinking that I just landed after a roller coaster ride of insanity. So it's not smooth sailing at all. It's very difficult, and it has, there's times where you think you're going to go crazy. There's times you think this is not going to go well. There's times suddenly that you have 3 or 4 clients at the same time, and you're like, what's going on with these people? Why did suddenly they've all woken up? What's wrong? And then there's the intelligence and the business consultancy part, which you do, which is uh how can I structure this the best way to give me comfort and to give me viability, in the sense of I don't want to work 24 hours in my day. So it's very difficult. Then it was difficult for me to delegate at first. But one of the first things that I did was delegate social media and newsletter, because I was terrible at it. I don't have the patience for it. And that was a given right from the start. And there's so many options nowadays. There's so many apps that you can use that have technical people available that can work at the hour for you. And so there's a lot of alternatives, and that is also something that I want people to know. There's a lot of alternatives. You don't need to hire someone for 1,500 euros a month. You can hire people that will work for you a couple of hours, maybe just organizing things, and then you can get things on their way. I know one of the difficulties that I have and I still struggle with is the admin part. I still have to find a software or an app or whatever it is that organizes in my head the CRM, and the interactions that I have with clients. But I'll get there. I know, at least I know that that is a difficulty that I have. I know that I have to solve that, but I'm not getting frozen by that difficulty. I have to keep on going. So Final words, Margaret, if you will, and of course, considering that we will film the YouTube series, which is going to be amazing. But final words, Margaret.
Well, I think it's just moving to a new country and starting a business is really exciting. It's an exciting opportunity to do something that you're passionate about, right? And it's an exciting opportunity to bring that your gifts forward and to serve your community. And I just love seeing all these projects taking shape. There's so many women doing really interesting things here in Cascais. Um, and so that's my purpose, right? Is to help all these projects come to fruition, and then working with you is also awesome because you make it happen in logistical terms, right? In
Yeah.
legal, logistical, financial, administrative terms, and so yeah.
It's a good combo, and I think we're going to be able to build a great community of people here in Cascais with the entrepreneurship world and women in particular. So I think we have a lot of work ahead of us.
Yeah.
Hopefully so. And I really wanted to thank you for your time and for giving us.
Can I add one
Sure,
plug
of
before we
course.
end? So we're actually holding a Pathfinder workshop on March 14th
Okay.
for women who want to, who've just maybe not just arrived, but who are thinking about what they might do with their time here. So they're at the initial stages. They don't necessarily have a business idea yet, but they have skills and they're thinking about what could I do here? What could I create? So it's a half-day workshop to brainstorm, identify skills, identify possibilities, identify first steps, so to kind of channel that energy and get started. So if you think any of your listeners are interested in
Yes, it
participating in the
will. We'll
workshop,
market that. Where
um,
where is it going to be?
it's going to be at Lax Cascais, the co-work in what Aldea de Juzo.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So yeah, March 14th in the morning, and
Okay.
maybe you can
We'll
put the
we'll
details
get
in the
all
show
the
notes.
details. Yes, we'll get all the details in the show notes. I hope a lot of people show up. I think that is a great initiative, certainly very much needed. And again, this is the start of the community that I think is very important to have here in Cascais. So thank you so much, Margaret. We will see each other soon, virtually and of course in person. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. I hope this was very useful to you. And please subscribe. I always forget to say this. You see, this is one of the things that I have to get better at is, those marketings, those calls to actions. Hey, you have to have a call to action. Okay, so subscribe, people. Okay, subscribe to the channel and to the podcast and look at the socials. There's a lot of information there. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Raquel. Bye.
Bye.